The year was 1998. A lady had just booked a flight that would take her from Nigeria to Saudi Arabia. She had taken her time to prepare for this trip because a lot depended on it. This trip was coming days after the country lost its leader. The people were still in mourning. So it was then a surprise to see that the lady embarking on this trip was the late president's wife. This was where things got interesting. While checking in at the airport, the late President Sani Abacha's widow had 38 pieces of luggage. This raised a lot of questions, but it was when the police decided to search her bags to see what she was taking with her to Saudi Arabia that they uncovered the most shocking thing in the history of corruption. These 38 suitcases were stuffed with loads of cash. Miriam Abacha was smuggling money out of the country in suitcases. This alarming discovery soon caught the attention of the new military government. Whose money was she running with? How much money is she running away with? Is she trying to secure the money stolen by the Abacha government? This series of questions must have been welling up in the minds of the investigators as they launched what would be the most interesting hunt for the infamous Abacha loot. I spent these past couple of weeks poring over the court documents from all the trials that followed the investigations. I wanted to understand how he did it. Who helped him? Was there a syndicate? Most importantly, what happened to the return funds? Here with me are names, bank records, and other documents that will help us answer these important questions. I promise you it's not the usual Abacha conspiracy, so buckle up because it's going to be a wild ride. General Sani Abacha was one of the most controversial leaders in Nigeria's history. After helping bring back the military in the 1983 coup that installed Muhammadu Buhari as Nigeria's military head of state, he would again participate in another coup 20 months later to remove the same Buhari for another general, now Ibrahim Babangida. But it was the 1993 political crisis that rocked Nigeria following the June 12 election that gave way to the catastrophic regime of Sani Abacha. Having seized power, however, Abacha promised that there would be a transition to a civilian government within a few years. Those few years before that transition would turn out to be the most difficult for the Nigerian people.
Any attempt to test our will be decisively dealt with.
From randomly jailing activists and critics to a massive crackdown on media and civil rights groups, Abacha did every unthinkable thing you can imagine. His most brutal moment saw him execute Niger Delta activist and playwright Ken Saro-Wiwa. This event had a disastrous effect on Nigeria as the international community ostracized the country for human rights violations. But it wasn't all that gloomy. While his human rights violations were well documented, Abacha's administration also oversaw an increase in the country's foreign exchange reserves from $494 million in 1993 to $9.6 billion by the middle of 1997, and reportedly reduced the external debt of Nigeria from $36 billion in 1993 to $27 billion by 1997. There are some in Nigeria today who still believe Abacha to be a good economic manager. His supporters claim he stabilized the exchange rate at 22 naira per dollar, even though the unofficial rate was 80 naira per dollar. Spoilers alert, this policy benefited many of his chosen associates who were buying dollars at the official rate and selling it in the black market. More on that later. Now, after Abacha dealt with the political crisis of 1993, he placed his loyalists in key positions to ensure there was no real threat to his power. His heavy-handed approach to criticism also meant media houses were not turning their searchlight on him and his family. This was when the looting began. In 2014, the US forfeited more than $480 million. one of the largest forfeitures in history. These were proceeds of corruption hidden in bank accounts all around the world. Bank accounts owned by former Nigeria dictator General Sani Abacha and his co-conspirators. One of the U.S. Assistant Attorney Generals, Leslie R. Caldwell of the Justice Department's Criminal Division said, quote, "Rather than serve his country, General Abacha used his public office in Nigeria to loot millions of dollars." The Justice Department official revealed that the US government was forfeiting these $480 million in corruption proceeds to be used for the benefit of the Nigerian people. But why was this happening now? How did this money even end up in these Western countries that usually whine about the high levels of corruption in Africa? The judgment that ordered this huge forfeiture was the result of a civil forfeiture complaint the Department of Justice filed in November 2013 against more than $625 million in the largest kleptocracy forfeiture action brought in the department's history. These are the court documents from that lawsuit. It reads here in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, United States of America, Asset Forfeiture and Money Laundering Section, Criminal Division, United States Department of Justice. Yeah. This includes approximately $303 million in 2 bank accounts in the bailiwick of Jersey, $144 million in 2 bank accounts in France, and 3 bank accounts in the United Kingdom and Ireland with at least $27 million. The investigation conducted by the FBI led to this damning document that was then tendered at the United States District Court of Columbia. The documents, which I have right here with me, implicated the late son of the Nigerian leader, Ibrahim Abacha, his second son, Mohammed Abacha, his associate, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, former National Security Advisor, Ismaila Gwazo, associate of the Abacha family, Alhaji Amadu Daura, then Minister of Finance, Chief Anthony Ani. There is also lawyer and associate of the Abacha family, David Umaru. These people were accused of using phony offshore companies to divert billions of dollars of Nigerian state funds into their private accounts. The document highlighted how, in one instance, Abacha, Mohammed, Bagudu, and others systematically embezzled public funds worth billions of dollars from the Central Bank of Nigeria on the pretense that the funds were meant to be used for national security. The CBN, not wanting to stand in the way of national security, dispersed the funds, after which Abacha and Bagudu moved them overseas. In all, more than $2 billion was stolen from the Central Bank of Nigeria alone. But how was Abacha able to loot this sort of money with no one finding out? I mean, the wife tried running with 38 boxes and she got caught, right? So, how did he do it? According to these detailed investigations, Abacha would direct his National Security Advisor, Ismaila Gwazo, who doubled as his bagman, to present him with false funding requests for security operations or equipment, which were within his powers to authorize. In one of the memos written to Abacha by Gwazo, he urgently demanded money from the Nigerian Treasury to fight critics overseas. In his words, quote, "America has gone berserk and seems to leave no stone unturned in ridiculing this nation." In the 1994 memo written by Ismaila Gwazo, he demanded that $30 million be wired to a Geneva account. Abacha then signed off on the letters and forwarded them to the CBN, which was then forced to disburse the funds. In all, Abacha endorsed well over 64 security vote letters, each of which resulted in the withdrawal of huge sums of money from the CBN. At times, the funds were directly remitted in travelers' checks, and to avoid delays, cash was also given by the Central Bank of Nigeria to Ismaila Gwazo, who then took the money to General Sani Abacha's house. At the house, Mohammed Abacha, the dictator's son, would wait to launder the money through Nigerian banks or by Nigerian or foreign businessmen to offshore accounts belonging to Mohammed Abacha, Abba Abacha, Abdul Kadir Abacha, and their associate, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. According to these investigations, There were instances of about 36 transfers totaling $386 million where the monies were transferred directly from the Central Bank of Nigeria by wire transfers to bank accounts abroad, held by offshore companies belonging either to members of the Abacha criminal organization or to Nigerian or foreign businessmen, who later remitted the same sums to members of this organization. On one particular interesting occasion, Abacha and one of his associates, Sani, made the government purchase non-performing government debt from a company controlled by Bagudu and Mohammed Abacha at highly inflated prices. They reportedly generate a profit of over $282 million from this deal. During his regime, Abacha exercised full control over government contracting, award of oil and gas concessions, and other lucrative government ventures. This control was used by the syndicate to seek bribes from foreign companies. In November 1993, for example, Abacha stopped payment on Nigerian government contracts with foreign companies, including the Dumes Group, a French civil engineering firm. Although the Dumes Group would later restructure itself as a Nigerian-based company, Dumes Nigeria Limited, it was unable to collect approximately $469 million in connection with these contracts. Investigations revealed that an attorney and associate of the Abacha family advised the owners of Dumes that payments could be restarted if they agreed to kick back 25% of those payments to the Abacha family. Dumes agreed with this arrangement. The company would later enter into an agreement with Allied Network Limited, a Nigerian corporation that was created by the said associate of the Abacha family to receive kickbacks on behalf of this family. By December of that year, this Abacha associate, who went by the name Umaru, opened an account in the name of Allied Network Limited at Union Banque Privée, UBP, in Geneva, Switzerland. This account was used to funnel kickback payments to the Abacha organization. Dumes opened an account at UBP to receive the payments from the Nigerian government once they were restarted. Between August 16, 1996 and May 22, 1998, the CBN transferred money to the Dumes account at UBP in Geneva. Out of this amount, $97 million, or 25% of the said contract sum, was then transferred by Dumes to Allied Network Limited for distribution to members of this Abacha organization. Sometime in late 1997, Mohammed Abacha received some payments from this same Dumes. This payment was intended for Allied Network Limited. Now, as part of their looting mechanism, Abacha's bagman Ismail Agwazo persuaded the late dictator to allow him to flood the market with US dollars to maintain a stable exchange rate. With permission granted, Gwazo bought $100 million from the Central Bank of Nigeria at the official rate of 22 naira per dollar and sold at the market rate of 84 naira per dollar, keeping the profit. But their illegal activities didn't stop here. On December 9, 1995, the Nigerian president's wife, Mariam Abacha, went on television to publicize the start of her immunization program. This was her moment to give back to the people. As the mother of the nation who cared for her children, she was saddened by the fact that Nigeria was now isolated and children were dying from curable diseases such as tuberculosis, polio, measles, meningitis, and diphtheria. This immunization program was a way to give Nigerian children a fighting chance. What Mrs. Abacha failed to mention, however, was that her son, Mohammed, and his businessman sidekick, Abubakar Bagudu, were siphoning off $66 million from the $111 million purchase of vaccines from the French firm Pasteur Merios. According to these investigations, the money was stashed away in Western banks with the perfectly legal help of a certain David Jones. David Jones is a British businessman whom Mohammed described as a family friend for 20 years. Jones lived in Hampshire and was a director of Smith & Tires, a company based in Borough Hill Street, South London. Guess what? Mohammed Abacha was a principal shareholder in this company. In a document prepared by Mohammed's lawyer, Mr. Jones is described as General Sani Abacha's manager. In the records of the US Citibank, where the Abacha brothers had an account for more than 10 years, Mr. Jones is shown to have the power of attorney over Mohammed's private account, through which tens of millions of dollars were moved. In April 1996, Citibank records show a transfer to Smith & Tires of $300,000. A further $500,000 went to Smith & Tires in 1999 from Harbour Engineering, another Abacha company. Well, back to our vaccine story. So it turns out the vaccine transactions did raise a few eyebrows among London bankers. In fact, in 1995, Claudia Nazer of Citibank in Berkeley Square emailed, quote, "I just do not feel right about this deal. It has typical characteristics of a 419 fraud. Sound like rum to you?" Yeah, there's a copy of the email. Her colleague David Hightower said the client is a prominent and long-standing Nigerian customer. Yeah, this her colleague went further to say he felt they needed to be specific and clear and diplomatic in the way they present their concern about potential money laundering scams. Despite these legitimate concerns raised, the deals went through. These stolen funds were mostly sent to accounts held in faraway countries. In Switzerland alone, Abacha had over 140 accounts holding more than $750 million in 11 banks. In Liechtenstein, he had $100 million in 3 banks, Luxembourg $630 million, UK $450 million in 20 accounts held in 11 banks. I know you're wondering, but who are the others that made up the syndicate? It couldn't have been Abacha and his family alone. Yeah, the list is a long one. While going through paper trails left by the Abacha syndicate, investigators uncovered names of foreign banks and bankers who helped facilitate the hundreds of transactions. But who are these folks? Let's go through the associates. We have Gabriel Katri, a Swiss-Israeli banker. Mr. Katri was a financial advisor to several heads of state in the Middle East and Africa. He was convicted in November 2009 for abetting what was described as a criminal enterprise by Abacha. Mr. Katri was later fined $10 million and given a non-custodial sentence by the Swiss investigating magistrate. And then we have Gilbert Chagori. Mr. Chagori is a Nigerian-born businessman of Lebanese descent. He is the founder of the Chagori Group, whose multi-billion-dollar assets span construction, manufacturing, real estate, and hotels. According to court documents, in the 1990s, Mr. Chagori helped set up accounts with SG Reed Bank in Geneva for the Abacha family, enabling them to benefit from illegal transfers of over $120 million from the Central Bank of Nigeria and secured immunity from prosecution. He was convicted in 2000 of money laundering and aiding a criminal organization. He later paid $600,000 in fines to the court in Geneva, Switzerland, and refunded $66 million to the Nigerian government. And then we have Abubakar Bagudu. According to court documents, Mr. Bagudu was perhaps the most prolific bagman of the Abacha syndicate. When addressing the court, one of the American investigators said, quote, "Abubakar Atiku Bagudu was an associate of General Abacha and his sons who participated in the conspiracy to steal and launder hundreds of millions of dollars. Among other things, Bagudu played an instrumental role in setting up and executing the complicated financial transactions used to launder the proceeds of the conspiracy." End of quote. Mr. Bagudu was involved with all the offshore front companies and bank accounts, from the British Virgin Islands to Ireland to Switzerland, Germany, Singapore, England, Paris, Guernsey, and Jersey, used to steal and launder billions of dollars belonging to Nigeria under the Abacha regime. He acted as a director and in some cases as a signatory or prime beneficiary. Well, after the return of democracy, this same man has served as a senator and then governor of Nigeria's northwestern Kebbi state. He currently serves as Minister of Budget and Economic Planning. Well, I hope the Honorable Minister and DSS, as well as the police or whoever gets to see this video, will know that I'm only narrating history to document things that did happen so that future generations will get to know what happened during the Abacha regime. Everything I have shared about this particular character is already public knowledge. I felt I should still say that for my own safety. So, cheers guys. Our next character is this guy, David Umaru. In an affidavit filed on November 18, 2013 by the US Department of Justice, this man was said to have allegedly acted as the official extortionist and money launderer of the Abachas. He was a legal advisor and associate of the Abacha family. The court papers state that he facilitated the payment of illegal commissions to the family in return for securing the repayments of debts of some $470 million owed by the Nigerian government to Dumais Nigeria PLC, a French company controlled by André Kamel. Remember the Umaru that helped facilitate the transaction between Dumais and a certain Allied Network Limited? Yeah, this is him. Mr. Umaru has since become a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Again, DSS or whoever is in charge here, I'm only, trying to narrate history, so you understand. Cheers, guys. Other people on this list include Danilo Jurov, a business associate of Gilbert Chagori. He was found guilty of money laundering in December 2000 by order of a Geneva court. We have Amadou Daura, who was an associate of the Abacha family. He operated the Sunshine Bureau de Change. The court in Washington was told that Mr. Daura participated in the conspiracy by moving criminal proceeds out of Nigeria to accounts he controlled in England and by transferring a criminal proceeds into and out of the United States to accounts controlled by the Abacha family. And then there's Mark Reiser, recommended to Mr. Abacha as an experienced financial consultant. Mr. Reiser set up several accounts held by intermediary offshore companies with SG Ruig Bank in SA in Geneva, which facilitated the illegal transfers of some $50 million to Abba Mohamed Abacha and their business associates, according to Africa Confidential. And then there's Jean-Pierre Decker, Regional Operations Manager for ADAX and Oryx Advisory Services in Nigeria. Mr. Decker was said to have agreed to transfer illegal commissions on Nigerian oil contracts of over $76 million to accounts linked to Abba and Mohamed Abacha. There's Richard Grania Defere, a founding director and third in command at ADAX and Oryx Advisory Services. Mr. Defere facilitated the illegal transfer of funds from the CBN to accounts held by Mr. Abacha and his son Mohamed Abacha. And then there's this Indian, Raj Ajadas Bhovani. The Royal Court of Jersey seized $26.5 million from Mr. Bhovani, an Indian, in 2011, after having determined he was guilty of money laundering offenses. The case arose out of Jersey's investigation into the activities of Mr. Sani Abacha. Mr. Bhovani was said to have laundered the money through a Jersey branch of the Bank of India. According to Jersey court documents, he made a fortune from selling vehicles to the Nigerian government under two separate contracts in 1996 and 1997 through a Panamanian company named Tata Overseas Sales and Services, which was in reality a front company for him. Court papers showed that the true purchase prices of the vehicles were inflated by a record 400 and 500% at the behest of Mr. Abacha and Mohamed Buba Marwa. He was reportedly sentenced to 6 years imprisonment for the money laundering offenses. And then we have some ministers and security officers who participated in this money heist as well. Among them are Anthony Ani. Mr. Ani held the position of Nigeria's Minister of Finance under General Sani Abacha. According to these court documents, he authorized the disbursement of Nigerian government funds in furtherance of the security vote fraud and debt buyback fraud. In April 1997, Mr. Ani ordered the CBN to transfer $228 million in 2 tranches to accounts held in the name of Eagle Alliance and Morgan Procurement, 2 of the stealing machinery controlled by Mr. Bagudu. The court documents show that these transactions did occur on or about April 15, 1997 and April 22, 1997. The respective amounts transferred were $141 million into and out of a correspondent bank account at Citibank in New York to Goldman Sachs in Zurich, Switzerland. Another was $141 million into and out of a correspondent bank account at Citibank, New York, still to Goldman Sachs in Zurich, Switzerland. Another member of the syndicate was the famous Ismail Guazo. Mr. Guazo held the position of National Security Advisor under the regime of Mr. Sani Abacha. He participated in the conspiracy to steal and launder hundreds of millions of dollars. The investigators said, among other things, Guazo prepared and executed the false paperwork that caused the CBN to release hundreds of millions of dollars worth of US, UK, and Nigerian currency as part of the security vote fraud. For instance, in a letter addressed to General Sani Abacha on August 20, 1996, Mr. Guazo falsely stated that, quote, in light of the current political situation in the country, coupled with the increase in security operations, there is need for a lot of funds to handle the challenges outlined above, such that I require 350 million naira plus $30 million and 15 million pounds. Please consider the desperate need and approve. End of quote. This man must be super creative to have forged about 60 such letters, each getting approval. Incredible talent, I must say. And then there is Dan Etete. He was the subject of an international arrest warrant issued by France for money laundering. Mr. Dan was said to have presided over negotiations for the $6 billion gas export plant at Bonny Island, which was under investigation by the US, France, British, and the Nigerian authorities. He was the former Nigerian Minister of Petroleum under the regime of Sani Abacha and was found guilty of money laundering by French court in 2007. And then there's Buba Marwa. Mr. Marwa, who was the then Nigeria's defense advisor to the United Nations, was involved in negotiating the 2 contracts Mr. Bawani inflated in 1996 and 1997. The total sum was approximately $184 million, but in truth, the vehicles were worth less than $40 million. The proceeds were paid to accounts controlled by Mr. Bawani in Jersey, out of which approximately $100 million was paid to accounts in Switzerland connected with Mr. Sani Abacha and Mr. Marwa. Interestingly, Mr. Marwa is the current chairman of the National Drug Law and Enforcement Agency, the NDLEA. Again, cheers guys, you're my heroes, what can I say? We have another associate of his, known as Paul Oguma. He was the former CBN chief. Mr. Oguma was reportedly instructed by General Sani Abacha and Mr. Guazo to make several illegal transfers of funds from the CBN to accounts they controlled. For instance, in a letter dated November 30, 1994, Mr. Guazo falsely stated that, quote, $100 million are requested to combat an economy that was deflected and distorted through the black market. Abacha swiftly endorsed the security vote letter with his signature, thereby approving the disbursement of the requested funds. The endorsed letter was then sent to the CBN. The CBN then disbursed these said funds as directed. But Mr. Oguma, the CBN chief, knew that using these security vote letters to take money from the CBN violated what the CBN had described as Nigeria's accepted government procedure. The proper government procedures required the Minister of Finance and the Accountant General to each approve disbursement by Nigeria's budget. The security vote withdrawals were not properly approved by both the Minister of Finance and the Accountant General, and were also not included in Nigeria's budget for the relevant fiscal years. Well, who cares what the law says? The general gets whatever the general wants, right? Well, with no concern for the plight of the Nigerian people, This family business of looting the national treasury was going great until Abacha died mysteriously. And then the house of cards came crashing to the floor. It was September 1999 when Swiss lawyer Enrico Monfrini answered a phone call that would keep him up for the next 20 years. President Olusegun Obasanjo had heard about Monfrini somehow, and the Nigerian government wanted his help as a matter of urgency. So, Obasanjo's newly installed administration sent a high-ranking government official to Geneva in Switzerland to recruit this lawyer. This government official called Monfrini in the middle of the night and asked to meet. The job was simple, at least they thought. Monfrini was tasked with getting hold of the money stolen by Abacha between 1993 and his death in 1998. To get started, the Nigerian police handed him the details of a few closed Swiss bank accounts, which appeared to be holding some of the money Abacha and his associates had stolen. According to Monfrini, a preliminary investigation published by the police in November 1998 found that more than $1.5 billion, that is 1.1 billion pounds, was stolen by Abacha and his associates. Armed with the documents showing the history of the accounts, he took the issue to the Swiss Attorney General. From here, the dance began. Mr. Monfrini successfully argued that the Abacha family and their associates formed a criminal organization. This was critical because it opened up more options for how the authorities could deal with their bank accounts. The Attorney General issued a general alert to all the banks in Switzerland, demanding that they disclose the existence of any accounts opened under the Abacha's names and aliases. Within 48 hours, 95% of the banks and other financial institutions declared what they had, which seemed to belong to the Abacha's family. This would uncover a web of bank accounts all over the world. Mr. Monfrini reportedly helped the Nigerian government in their battle to secure the Abacha loot and return the monies home. But he didn't do this out of the goodness of his heart. He had agreed to a commission of 4% on the money sent back to Nigeria. Well, while finding the money was relatively easy and quick, Mr. Monfrini would soon realize that getting it back to Nigeria was not going to be that easy or quick. According to this Swiss lawyer, the Abachas were fighting like dogs. They appealed just about everything the prosecution team did. The goal was probably to delay the process for as long as possible. The family hired dozens of expensive high-class lawyers in every jurisdiction where the family and their associates were being pursued. Reports claim that more than $12 million was estimated to have gone to paying these lawyers. In the United Kingdom alone, the family allegedly spent about $8 million on the biggest of solicitors to help fight the Nigerian government. In fact, in some instances, the family reportedly tried to use blackmail on the investigators. But at the end of it all, they lost. Well, not entirely. For allegedly helping their father plunder Nigeria of an estimated $5 billion in the 90s, Mohammed and Abba Abacha and other relatives of the late dictator Sani Abacha were rewarded by the Nigerian government. According to this report, a secret deal between the government and the Abachas demanded the family to return part of the loot in exchange for perpetual immunity against prosecution. This deal, kept classified for months, was personally approved by President Goodluck Jonathan in July 2014 and jointly authored by the Attorney General Mohammed Adoke. The terms of the agreement was later obtained by Premium Times and other news outlets in the country. The base of the said agreement is for the Abacha family to cooperate with federal authorities to have the stolen funds repatriated in exchange for clemency. On receipt of the assets, Nigeria will, quote, end any and all legal proceedings and investigations against the settling parties, referring to the Abacha family. The government will again recognize properties owned by the family in Nigeria, the agreement says. Further details in the agreement reveal that the Federal Republic of Nigeria will withdraw any and all civil proceedings against the settling parties. Another clause said the federal government will end without any finding of liability or guilt any and all proceedings of whatever kind, including criminal, civil, or administrative proceedings contemplated or pending in any court in Nigeria. The government also decided to release their passports and allow them travel at will, basically ending the case against the Abacha family. The Nigerian government agreed to this secret deal as a sort of plea bargain to have the Abacha family drop its case and allow the money to be repatriated. Geneva prosecutors also closed their own cases against the Abacha. So with all charges dropped, the monies have been returning home bit by bit, with every administration getting its share of the Abacha windfall. But what has happened with all these monies? The Federal High Court in Abuja, in a landmark judgment, has ordered the disclosure of the spending details of about $5 billion of the Abacha loot by the governments of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, Goodluck Jonathan, and Muhammadu Buhari. The court ordered the government of President Bela Tinubu to disclose the exact amount of money stolen by General Sani Abacha from Nigeria and the total amount of Abacha loot recovered, and all agreements signed on same by the governments of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, Jonathan, and Buhari. The total amount of the looted funds recovered from this late head of state, General Sani Abacha, in the past 24 years has been put at $3.65 billion. However, there has been no clear information on how exactly the money was used by the Nigerian government. So the question is, has it been relooted? The effect of the Abacha theft on Nigeria's economy can still be felt 26 years after his death. You see, Abacha, his allies, and top officials added a new form of corruption that killed the Nigerian economy. That is the siphoning of money used by Nigeria's oil refineries to turn crude into gasoline. More than $2 billion was reportedly diverted from Nigeria's 4 state-owned refineries, leading to their collapse. Nigeria started the import of refined fuels under Abacha while he and his cronies looted the national treasury. Some reports even claim that he was leading the trade of importation of refined petroleum into the country as well. The evil of Abacha's regime can never be overstated, and every waking day in Nigeria reminds us of the cruelty of that family. Little wonder then why the name of Abacha is associated with money laundering in Nigeria. But do you really think Abacha stands alone as the worst looter in Nigeria's history, or the one who got caught?